Good evening, Safe Space family, and thank you so much for joining us. For those of you that have not been by before, Safe Space is a place of just that, safety. It's a place to make you all aware. My heart is for the healing of women, as this wonderful guest tonight, but there are messages and stories here that could connect with anyone. And I ask that the Lord does just that, that He allow these messages to land in the place of need that they are most needed. This is to convey to you tonight through the exchanging of stories, ideas, information, prayer instruction. And I'm thinking of all the shows that we've covered in our 2.5 year tenure to make you aware that there's always hope in God, no matter where you come from, no matter what you've done, no matter what is going on in your life right now. We are never too dirty. We're never too torn. We're never too tattered for our Father. And this is something that is near and dear to my heart, which brings me to our wonderful guest tonight. I've never seen her call herself Dr. Erica Anderson, but she is indeed Dr. Erica Anderson. She holds an EDS specializing in many years of service through special education. But she is not just an educator. She is also an ordained elder. She's an author. The important parts of her life are, of course, mom, wife, grandmother, but she has a passion for the healing of women. When I read her vision, it says, with the vision to fulfill my mission, helping women, healing, my focus is to encourage, to uplift women to live in the freedom and the fulfillment of who God created them to be. I couldn't have said it any better myself. What a wonderful passion. I understand having a heart for women because you are born a woman and you know the plight and the bloodstained batters that we hold up, no matter if we're hurt, no matter if we're wounded, no matter what we've been through. So often we have been taught to put on a smile, hold your head back, and walk through. Sometimes we're hurting inside. A large part of her passion deals with inner healing, the mother and father trauma, how it impacts us in our adult life, the rejections, the self-image, the poor self-esteem. She wants to help in the healing journey. So we see ourselves in the identity of how God sees us, which is so important, and giving strategies of how to overcome some of the challenges that we face through all of these hurts and wounds that start as early as in our childhood in many instances. I want to introduce to you the esteemed Erica Anderson. Welcome to Safe Space.
Thank you so much, Shelby. It is indeed an honor to be here. Thank you so much for reaching out, and thank you so much for the work that you do in the kingdom. Phenomenal work. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you so very much. One of the things that when our mutual friend Gwen told me about you, and I've been hearing about you for years, many years, before I ever saw you or spoke with you, I knew who you were because she holds you in such high regard. However, I didn't know the work that you were doing regarding healing and all of these things that were in your heart. And she said, you really need to talk to her. Your themes are so similar and parallel. And Gwen actually named Safe Space. She was here in my home. She did. She was here in my home with her wonderful chefing. She was cooking. And I was telling her about how God just would not leave me alone about it, and telling the stories. It's always been important to me to hear people's stories because to me, testimony is the greatest testament of how wonderful our God is.
Absolutely.
Because He has no preference of person. He doesn't care who you are, who you're not. He loves us all.
Absolutely.
And He understands where to meet us at our place of need. So often, because I have gotten caught in a trap of condemnation, not understanding, as you said in your mission and some other of your material, how He sees us and how many chances and how He's just waiting for us to understand who we are in Him. We get caught up in life situations and hurts, and we bog ourselves down with Satan's distractions and what we think in our own head. So you're having a conference called Healing Anyway, the Experience, Saturday, September the 28th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Sharpsburg, Georgia. Tell us a little about your ministry,
Okay.
the mission, and how you got to the place of being so passionate about this inner healing, which
Okay.
takes me through a lot of things, a couple of shows that I've done, but we'll talk about that after you give me a little more insight and give the audience a little more insight of your ministry and one of the things that you do. But anything else that you like to talk about, your daughter, your grandbaby, your son, your husband, your future dreams, whatever it is you'd like to tell us
Okay.
about, let's get into it.
Okay. So first of all, I just kind of want to piggyback on just the name safe space. One of the reasons that I feel like I've been called to women in the healing arena is because our relationships have not been safe spaces for us.
Right.
And so I love the fact that you're called safe space. The healing journey for me was very personal because I had to be a first partaker of what it is that I am pouring out to the women. I suffered with rejection. I suffered from divorce. I suffered from low self esteem and just not believing that I was who God called me to be. And as a result of that, I went through some of the same steps that I take women through today. And a majority of the women that I meet, when we start initially with the God identity. Because if we aren't clear on who God is, we will not know who we are. So we start off with our God image. We start off with Psalm 139, which says we are fearfully and wonderfully made, not in and of ourselves, but because of who made us. And so I help them to understand that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, period. You don't have to work to get that. It's already done. And the Father placed us here because he wanted us to have relationship. And so that's where we get attacked is through our relationships. I
Absolutely.
I take these women back to their parentage, right? Because a lot of the things that we experience as women didn't just happen yesterday. It didn't happen a couple of years ago. These are some things that date back to childhood. And I talk to them about mother wounds and father wounds. And I explain to them that the mother is supposed to nurture, teach, and be a safe space. Not everybody has had that experience. And so when they've not had that experience, it's difficult for them to feel loved. It's difficult for them to give love. It's difficult for them to even be mothers. And as women, we're incubators. We hold on, we carry not only the good to birth, but we carry the bad. We will incubate the bad until someone comes in and says, hey, look, let me help you walk through this journey. I'll talk to them about father wounds. The father has to protect, the father has to provide, and the father also has to give identity. If those things were not done at childhood, you find yourself looking for identity in the wrong people, in the wrong places, in the wrong spaces. And what I've learned is these wounds tend to change our personalities.
Mhm.
You may say, oh, I'm shy. Are you really shy? Or have you experienced rejection to the extent that you don't want to be vulnerable?
Mhm.
You know, it's easy for us to say, oh, that's just the way I am. No, the way that you are is the way that God made you. You have adopted these negative beliefs and turned them into your truth. So these are some of the things that we work on because it doesn't just start here. It started from a place. And even if your parents were doing the best that they knew how to do, it doesn't negate the fact that this happened to you.
Right.
And where do we move from here?
Right.
Where do
That's
we
good.
move from here?
That's good. That's good. That's really, really, really good because that is a journey that after divorce and illness with Crohn's disease and a number of other things that were very hard for me in my 30s, because I don't come from generations of a lot of divorce.
Mhm.
So he was my high school sweetheart, and I just thought it would be forever. And then before the divorce, I went into illness of Crohn's disease. So I had a lot of physical as well as emotional and inner healing to do. So to start at a place of self-examination, that do I really know and understand who, as you said, God is? You have to know the infinite wonderfulness, for lack of a better term, and his love for us and us not having to earn, because we live in a system that you have to earn everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that within itself is the opposite of how we think and how we're trained to think, depending on your environment and your paradigms. And correct me if
Absolutely.
I'm wrong, Coach Anderson, most of those are kind of set by five based on the environment that you live in and the people that you're around, the feedback of how people respond to you, even when you walk into the room as a toddler. If you're
Absolutely.
well received and celebrated and loved and nurtured as the things that you spoke of, that develops a tendency in your personality, opposed to being scolded or not embraced or getting the things that obviously young children and all people need. No attention, no time spent, no teaching. All of that manifests these things in our personalities that we become to know as ourselves. But to start at a place to just know who God is, to help us understand who made us and how he simply loves us.
Absolutely.
Is something that I still, to this day at 56, struggle with the awe of how he loves us and who he is and how wonderful he is. But getting that has helped me to understand that, just what you said in the Psalms 139, that I don't have to do anything else because he made me fearfully and wonderful. And yes, I will stumble. Yes, I will fall. Yes, I will make mistakes, but it gives me a clean slate each and every time. But it all starts right here. So
Just mindset. And you mentioned about five. And a lot of times when I'm speaking with women, I'm not speaking to the adult woman. I'm speaking to that 5-year-old girl that is stuck in that trauma. And so we have to peel back the layers until we get to adulthood, because we get stuck. We get stuck. These things happen to us as children, and we mask them, and we pretend that it didn't happen. And then we own it. And then we say it was my fault. And so we end up getting in relationships with other people, and we're filtering through negative beliefs that aren't really who we are. And so I help women discover who they are, but it's impossible to know who you are when you're not healed. Who you are is not broken. Who you are is every bit whole and healed. And I think we're so apt to attach our salvation to the work of the cross, but we don't tap into the fact that himself took
all of
all
all
of
of
it, all of it. So I take them back to the cross. I'm like, girl, this has already been won for you. He died for this. Not that you could be saved only, but that you could be
free.
not only healed, but whole.
Mm-hmm.
There is a difference.
It is.
There is a difference. When I'm whole, that means I'm healed in my emotions. I'm healed in my soul, my mind, my spirit, my everything lines up with the word of God. He didn't just do my finger, he did all of me, everything. My finances are whole. So we want to bring women to wholeness. Yeah, it's called inner healing, but we want you whole. God wants you whole because in order to walk into your authentism or your authentic self, you've got to be whole. You can't be fragmented. Generations depend on us as women being healed because I believe that if you heal a woman, you heal a nation.
That's true.
You heal a nation.
That's what I meant by we've held up the bloodstained banner. Women are such an integral part of not only families, generations
Mhm.
in the families,
Mhm.
but of society. We hold such a pivotal role. And I totally agree with you. And so often, do you find in your work, I do understand that people have to come to you, but do you find in your work that sometimes women don't even realize that they're not whole because they've been on the cross all their lives?
Yeah, I do. And typically, especially when a woman is dealing with rejection, and she may not come out and say, I'm dealing with rejection, but she may say, I'm constantly seeking approval. She may say, I don't set boundaries. She may say, it's difficult for me to engage with people. And so when I hear these things, these are just twigs, right? I'm looking at the root.
So those are symptoms. Now, let
Yeah.
me ask you this. Do you find that whether she concentrates on not, or she's not strong in setting boundaries, or if she's not strong in not worrying about others' approvals, which kind of go hand in hand, but they can have a little different nuance. If the root of that could be something different, or does it always go back to something similar or the same thing? I guess I don't know if I posed that question well. What I'm trying to say is seeking approval and being a pleaser is very much so tied together, as well as not setting boundaries. But some people that do that, and I'm speaking of myself because I've done it in the past, I could always engage people very well, but I was horrible at setting boundaries. Horrible.
And I think to your point, it depends. It depends. I don't want to say that if you're an approval seeker or if you don't set boundaries, but that you definitely deal with rejection, but those are some of the symptoms. And you do it in such a way that you don't you always wanting to please people because you don't want to get rejected.
That makes
You
sense.
you don't set boundaries because you don't want to offend anybody, because if you offend somebody, then they're going to reject you. So you see where that goes.
I got it.
So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. And I had to look at my own life. You talked about divorce. I have several divorces, and each time I literally had to pick myself,
Off the
pull
floor.
myself out of a pit.
I
Right?
understand.
What is wrong with me?
Mhm.
Why did this happen? Why did that happen? And so that's why I'm so passionate, because it happened to me and I had to pull myself out with the help of the Lord
Mhm.
so that I could get to a point to where I'm okay with me. And my
Mhm.
husband, now we've been together 20 years.
Mhm.
And so it's not a journey that I walk three people through that I haven't been through.
I think personally, experience is the best teacher.
Absolutely.
It's a different level of passion and understanding
Mhm.
when you've walked them out in those shoes.
For sure.
You can empathize and study, and to be trained and prepared is
Mhm.
important,
Mhm.
but nothing is like being there. Divorce was very painful for me. And I think it was a large part of why there was 20 years in between. Um, because I did have to pick myself literally up off of the floor. And and I don't know if I so much, the thought enters anyone's head, okay, what's wrong with me? Why did this happen? Because I was in full acceptance of, especially looking back, what role I played or did not play to get us there.
Right.
But I think what was more pertinent in my mind is, why did I respond or react to certain things the way I did? I could have responded or reacted differently to not be a contributing factor to getting to that end result. So, but I have had to grow as a person and not stay there, because failure in my life, as far as my career, keeping my home, or moving forward in my life, even though I did not have children, was not an option. So I pushed through a lot of things in pain. So it was kind of compounding. So whatever new issues I ran upon, or the baggage that I was carrying with me from not drawing proper boundaries, because see, all of that stacks upon you because it's not operating in order.
Yes.
It's not operating in order. So I pushed through all of it with the help of the Lord, because I wouldn't have made it, not with all that I was carrying. And I wonder sometimes where the rejection happened to develop that in my personality. But looking back, I think is non-acceptance outside of my home. Whether it was with family or people by school or wherever. A lot of it was the way my mom dressed me.
Yeah. We deal with that with our daughter. She's a senior now, and social media has done a job as far as attacking our youth and making them feel as though the pictures that you see on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all of that is the standard. And when you don't meet that standard, you become different.
Right.
And you're not accepted in the circles because you're not, doing what everybody does.
That's
and
right.
So there's an extreme amount of pressure, and we're constantly telling her, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Be you, be your authentic self, be the you that God created you to be. You don't have to be a copy. You're an original.
I can only imagine what they're dealing with at the scale that they're dealing with, because looking back, I did not internalize a lot of it, or so I thought I did not, but I did. I remember teachers responding differently to me. I wasn't responsible for what, especially young as I was, and when I began to experience some of it, the way my mother adorned me. That wasn't, she was who she was, and I thank God for her, but she always just dressed me up. She did. It was a long time before I even remember having tennis shoes. I wore shoes. And my dad, we were middle class, but he worked hard. He worked himself to an early grave, quite frankly. By 63, my dad was gone home to be with Jesus, because he had worked so hard all of his life, and it was only the three of us. So he was a good provider, and she was a good spender. So, so often if I went to Disneyland, my mother's sister, her last living sibling, lived in LA. So sometimes I got a chance to go. Well, a lot of times I got a chance to go to Disney, and I had the projectors and different things. And sometimes people around me didn't. And they were ugly. They were ugly to me. I've always been very discerning and perceptive, even as a young kid. And I think that's where some of it was developed, because I was very accepted with my parents and my grandparents and celebrated in my home. So I felt secure at home. It was outside, if I were to look back and analyze it. So little things like that can happen and really have a large impact on how you develop in your personality. And you're really not even aware until it begins to manifest and cause issues over and over and over again.
Absolutely. And cycles. We keep repeating the same cycle. I have a similar background. I'm an only child.
I
And
am too.
so very much accepted in the home, but sometimes because of the things that you were able to get because you didn't have to share,
Mhm.
made you stand out. So I spent a lot of my time just maybe having a couple of friends here and there, but
Mhm.
not really being a part of the crowd. And now in retrospect, I can look at it and say, okay, God, I know you were moving even then when I didn't even know you. And
Mhm.
so, there's certain things that I've been called to that I've not been able to just fit in with the crowd.
Mhm.
And thanks be to God, I'm okay with it today.
Well,
That has not always
it
been the case.
it happens in time because I faced it at work in my 20s. I
Mhm.
faced it almost everywhere I go. I've gone. And excuse me, now I don't even know if it happens, to tell you the truth, because if it does, I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered. I've been through it so much in my lifetime. And even when people took the time eventually to get to know me, they were like, well, I didn't know. Well, you didn't give me a chance. You didn't
Yeah.
try to get to know me. You made your own assumptions by whatever your judgments were, or maybe what someone else told you. And I remember the first time it happened to me from an adult. And I was always taught to be respectful
Hmm.
and kind. And
Yes.
I had a soft personality. I wouldn't fight back or anything. And it was just so hurtful, whether it was a teacher or a relative. I
Hmm.
remember those instances to this day. So I get it. You've taught me so much in this just this short period of time with the things that you've spoken of. It makes so much sense. So tell us about, we've largely talked about your ministry, which is your healing ministry. We've talked about your conference. Is there something you'd like to specifically tell us about the conference? It's September 28th, and I'm going to register. I'm going to really try to get there.
Absolutely.
If Tony and I are not on vacation, I need to check the dates. I'm
Okay.
going to come um, Saturday, September the 28th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Sharpsburg, if I'm not mistaken, is down 85 South, correct?
It is. It's actually, yeah, it's Noonan, Sharpsburg area. It's right off
Gotcha.
of 85, not close. So Heal Anyway, the experience is going to be just that, an experience. Um, I'm going to be showing up in the fullest expression of who I am as a coach, as a healing and deliverance minister, but I'm also going to be bringing on some certified professional counselors and therapists because a lot of times we can say, oh, we just, you just pray that away. We just, da, 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 da. Not so. There are times when you need a therapist. I've had a therapist. I have had to sit on the couch to work through some things that I had. So I know the power of therapy and prayer because there's some things that are so deeply ingrained within us. Yeah, you can get inner healing, deliverance, and all of that, but you need a certified professional to help you to strategize and walk out what you've received. So they're going to be in the building. There's going to be an opportunity for panel discussion. I believe that the healing power of God is just going to saturate that place. My expectation is that no one will leave the way that they came in.
Amen.
That is what we're going to have vendors there. Um, And right now, I'm extending the pre-registration rate and the investment. Notice I didn't say cost because anything that costs, you can associate it with a loss.
That's
The
right.
investment is $25 and you will get a return. I can guarantee you that.
I'm
So
tonight. I
for the
promise. I meant to do so, but I need to double check the
yes.
dates.
So for the next week, we're offering continuing to offer that $25 investment. Um, so I
That's
want to
very
encourage
reasonable.
anybody to if you know someone that is struggling that needs inner healing, let them know about the conference. It is going to be a life-changing experience for
It
sure.
sounds exciting just with the things that you've spoken about. And I'm always open to grow and invest in myself. And that's a very reasonable cause. I can't think of any conference that the registration investment is $25.
Mhm.
So that's very reasonable. Um, I I see that you are an author
Yes.
along with the other things. And when I was reading about your passions and your hobbies, it talked about your intercessory prayer, your passion for that. And of course, it went back to seeing women healed, set free, and delivered. What type of book did you write? Tell us about your book.
So I have four, and the first one is an anthology, and it's called The Mom and Me, and I co-labored with 20 other women, and we talk about motherhood. We're not perfect, but we're perfect for the children that we birthed. And so my chapter talks about the fact that my children are 14 years and 1 day apart.
One
And
day.
October 21st and October 22nd are
Oh,
their birthday.
wow. Wow. Wow.
And so I discussed in the book the mother that I was when I had my son, who's now 31, and the mother that I was when I had my daughter, who's now almost 18. And so just you're giving some guidance as to, how to navigate, because you don't parent
The
with that
same.
age range the same way. I was a different person. I was 14 years older. So obviously there was some things that I was able to give my daughter that I just didn't know with my son. And so I kind of talked about that. The next book is What's God Got to Do with It? And in that book, my chapter talks about how God gave me a miracle. The third book is The Iconic Woman, and it talks about how to be iconic. But for me, as a woman of faith, being iconic goes back to Psalm 139. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. You are an icon because you were made by God.
That's right.
And the last piece that I wrote, I self-published, is a journal for Christian women who have experienced rejection. And I take you through 31 days of scripture and guided journal prompts, and just working through that.
That's awesome. That has to be an enriching process and definitely a self-investing process. I'm in a 40-day process right now. So that's that. But all of them sound wonderful. Will they be at the conference? The
They will
books?
be. They absolutely will be. And to your point, there was a certain level of healing that I received when I wrote each chapter,
I can imagine.
because
I
I
can,
had to put on paper what I was feeling. So I had to relive
mhm,
each of those experiences.
mhm. I can
So it was
imagine.
very healing and transformative.
I can imagine that would be. Now, can all of the books that we're going to make sure they're in the credits of the show,
Okay.
but where can they be purchased on Amazon or your website or
They are all on Amazon, but my website, ericavanderson.com, has a link to all four of them there. Well, no,
perfect?
just three of them. Yeah,
Okay, perfect, perfect. Well, I'll have the opportunity, prayerfully, if I'm not out of town, to get mine in person. But because I
absolutely.
definitely that journal sounds so interesting um, for where I am in my process. I have began some book studies with some women through my church, my First Ladies Women's Ministry, and one of them was fervent, and then
That's
we
a
did
good one.
Then we did Elijah, Faith, and Fire. And I think we're going to be resuming in the fall with discerning the voice of God. And one of that journal may be one that we tackle, and I'm in one this summer that was a short Bible study guide that I actually, believe it or not, found on TikTok, but it takes you through Boy Jesus, Elizabeth, Esther,
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Deborah. It is, and it does it in a devotional and a journal type of way.
Mhm.
It touches on the major verses that gives the points of their story that it wants to teach you about, but it's involved because it has the piece at the end with the questions. It tells you to get quiet, to get with God, ask yourself these questions. It encourages intimate time spent with Him. And I have found that as the years have gone on, probably starting with the pandemic, it's important to do that, to make an appointed time for Him.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I would thought before the pandemic that I was doing that, but not like I do now. I started specifically with a prayer line that I'm still involved with that was on during the pandemic, 5 days a week through my spiritual mom. And then it led to all these other things. And I just find a new level of peace, no matter what is going on, and then a new level of faith when you do that and you invest in yourself. And the more you know, and the more you see the examples of how God showed up in all these lives and all these situations and how they were imperfect. And I think that's why it's so important for me, for Safe Space, to tell these stories, because much like you're speaking of, the stories and the testimonies connect to me in different ways, in the paradigms that I have, the things that I've experienced. I see God in the way that I'm supposed to in these stories, these biblical stories.
Absolutely.
So these stories being out here on the internet for Safe Space prayerfully reaches people that are in the place to need what it is, whatever that person is saying. You know, we all hear differently, we communicate differently, we connect with different people.
Absolutely.
We connect with different stories based on again, our experiences, our paradigms, and just to lead them to the one.
Absolutely. Because we're just vessels. We're just vessels. He does the work through us. He does the work through us.
Absolutely. Well, you've touched on the mother and father wound, the self-imaging. I looked at your hobbies, your greatest jobs and gifts in your life is, of course, your family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they support me wholeheartedly in every endeavor. And it's a blessing to be able to call my family a safe space.
Amen.
Because that's not the case for everybody.
Mm-mm.
And so they correct me. They're like, wait a minute, they keep me humble. They really keep me humble.
That is awesome. I saw a picture of that grandbaby on Facebook's first day of school.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And part of the reason that I do the work that I do, because I know that I am a generational curse breaker, and there are certain things that I have experienced, and the buck stops here. And so I do the healing work so that I myself don't pass anything on to them that they don't need to have.
And that's a blessing. The generational curses are something, it's amazing that you brought that up. I was introduced to a ministry in Douglasville with a Pastor Mark Rice through Pastor Latasha Taylor last year. And he is very versed, as well as she, under his tutelage and leadership they gave me a new understanding of, you've always heard the generational curses and so forth, but so often you don't have the tools or the information as to what to do.
Yeah.
Or to even how to recognize them.
Yeah.
Some of them that they spoke of was, this one lady was on Latasha's show one night, and she lost her son to drowning, just to touch on this quickly. And she had a history of, her family was from Jamaica, And when she started questioning and talking to people, because so often family secrets, things that happen and repeatedly in generations are smut. People don't talk about them, especially when they are negative and they come with bad feeling. Found that in every generation, someone was drowning. And after doing research and being exposed to this ministry, she felt that through someone's sin in the past, that this curse had been given permission, with them reigning from Jamaica and always being around water, for this curse to be attached to their bloodline. And dealing with them and talking to them just taught me so much about praying for forgiveness that will hold us in the place of holding on to generational curses. Seeing things through our spiritual eyes, understanding that this is just not how I am, as you alluded to in the beginning. This is not something that I have to entertain because this was in my generations before, like heart disease, or this is what my family does, the alcohol that skips in certain generations, or the things that, if you look back, literally has been in generation after generation after generation. And you accept it as being just the way it is with your family. And if you don't watch yourself, it becomes so indoctrinated. There's a comfort level that will occur. And almost like, depending on what the habit is, it'll become a badge of honor because you belong. You fit. This is your tribe. These are your people. And it's all a trick of the enemy to steal, heal, and destroy us. So when I was reading about your inner healing, it took me back to that ministry in Douglasville under Pastor Mark Rice and his wife. And Pastor Taylor is one of their staff, their ministerial staff. But it is so important. And I think also, Erica, it is something that is not mainstream and talked about and taught enough to teach people to recognize it, one, call it out, and to what to do to release it.
And let me, because I took a note because I didn't want to forget this. So when I was preparing, I discovered this definition about inner healing, and it kind of speaks to what you just said. And it is the process of identifying and extracting emotional wounds that have impacted your personality and character now prohibit you from living a full life.
That's good.
Identification. Like, what is this thing that everybody in my family has? We have got to call it out. And a lot of times when people hear generational curses, they're like, oh, that's spooky stuff. Sometimes a generational curse can be broken just by you eating right.
That's right.
Just by you deciding to exercise.
That's
just
right.
by you deciding not to cook like the previous generation cooked with things that are unhealthy. So there's the spiritual, and then there's the practical. You may have an affinity towards something. You may be leaning towards something, but you have the ability to make another choice.
But the big thing there, as I think I said as you said, identified in the definition, is it was to recognize it. The big thing is to step outside of your norm long enough, with the assistance sometime of the Holy Spirit, because he can open your eyes, your spiritual eyes, just like, but to identify it, I think, is the hardest thing for some people, because they don't think anything is wrong with it, and they don't connect it with what is trapping them, holding them in bondage, causing the same unhealthy cycles over and over again. They just accept it as this is their lot in life, and that's a lie. That's one of the biggest tricks of the enemy, because as far back as they know, what they have always seen, it's been this or that and not this or that. And I've seen people with an indoctrinated mindset to the point that it was almost like breaking through steel with a hammer, because they just could not step outside long enough to recognize that you have the power in your hand to change this.
They become so attached to it that they become one with it.
It will offend you. Sometimes you can offend them with trying to pull them out of it, because as I said before, I've noticed there's a certain pride with an identity with your family. Who doesn't love their family? Who isn't proud of their family? Even all of the dysfunction and whatever else that's in it, it's your family.
Your family.
So it's a slippery slope, and it can be very, very toxic and dangerous if you don't identify. That's the beginning of everything, to the road of freedom, of deliverance, of being whole and healed. And I thank the Lord so for just exposing me to people like Pastor Mark Rice and Latasha and yourself that have this message, because as I said, I don't feel in mainstream teaching that these topics are taught, spoken on enough, because I think it can get to be slippery. And I think sometimes that people think, and nothing is absolute, but they stay away from things that are uncomfortable or that can offend or that are not easily understood.
Absolutely. And I just remembered a post that I posted on Facebook. It might have been today or yesterday, and it said, don't allow the way that someone else functions become your dysfunction.
That's right. That's good.
Because a lot of times people are functioning in a way that's not lining up, and it becomes our dysfunction. Not so. Not so, but you're right. It's almost like a taboo subject. In churches today, you may see a lot of prayer lines. You don't see a lot of healing and deliverance lines. You don't see a lot of churches with components that deal with inner healing, because I believe that you need inner healing to be able to progress to the point of deliverance. Inner healing and deliverance go hand in hand, right? But if you're afraid of it, you don't understand it, that doesn't mean the people don't need it.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Doesn't mean they don't need it just because you don't understand it.
And I think that's a mark in our Christian community, that a lot of people are falling through the cracks. A lot of people are falling through the cracks, because any adult that I know that's done any amount of living, and as you alluded to earlier, all parents that were trying to be responsible, trying to raise their children, they did the best they knew, because they have paradigms, they have healing issues.
Right.
And for the reason, for many generations, this has been something that has not been addressed. And I think also in the Black community, I talked to a doctor, Adrian, how could I forget her name? I can see her face. Her sister is a very good friend of mine, Dr. Renee Andrews. But I think her name is Dr. Renee Francis. That's it. Thank you, God. Dr. Adrian Francis. And she's a psychologist in Roswell. And we talked about counseling, the patients that she saw. And she wrote a book about all the way back to the mother and father wounds, and how that develops, and how it is so hard and been a stigma for our people to seek that type of assistance and help. But I think we're coming into a place now. I've talked to more and more and more people that have a counselor, or that has been to counseling, or minimally sought out a life coach. It is something that we're coming into the knowledge that we need to move forward and even be the total person to be able to walk out the purpose for which God brought us here. We cannot limp through life and be everything that He's created us to be. It's impossible. It's a tumultuous internal fight
Mhm.
that goes on over and over and over again, and you never seem to dig yourself out of that hole. So if you're not careful, you just end up in the hole or in a rut. So I think
Absolutely.
Dr. Francis talked about her own experience with her parents breaking up when she was a little girl. They reigned originally from Jamaica. Her sister is a PhD of physical therapy. And as I said, Adrienne is a counselor. But listening to her journey and how she responded to the abandonment of their father and the hardship that he left them in, and the effect that it had on their mom,
Yeah.
being left with them, having, to deal with and process all of that at such a young age, and how she processed it as the oldest sibling, because every sibling, the place that they are in birth order, it affects them differently.
Absolutely.
And so that was very interesting because I thought of her. I'm glad we're having this part of the conversation when I was reading your information. It all kind of ties together because you're hearing these things over and over again. There is some truth when you're looking at women that have lived it and brought themselves out, and they're living to be able to reach back and help others. So we're going to start right there tonight with thanking you for being obedient,
Oh, thank you.
of reaching back and helping others, and instituting your healing ministry and doing your healing anyway experience. Because I know, just listening to you talk tonight, that women will be healed, they will be made whole, they will be delivered through your ministry and the experience that they'll have at your conference, even if it just starts them on their healing journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the wonderful things about having those professionals there, because I can basically discern, even in my master classes and my one-on-ones, I know how far I can take a person. And I know when to say, okay, I think there's another step that you need to take to continue this process.
Mhm.
And that's okay. And I think we need to abandon the stigma
Oh, yes.
that has been associated with having a therapist or getting counseling. We don't have a problem going to the doctor when we're ill. Some of these things are true illnesses, and we need assistance in order to become whole.
I agree. One of the things she touched on in her book, and I try to be an introspective thinker. We as a race have been so behind so many things. And I think that we're just coming into the level of education,
Mm-hmm.
affordability on a scale
Mm-hmm.
that it is measurable, to understand that we have accessibility to some of these things. I think some of the stigma that was attached was ignorance
Mm-hmm.
of the importance of that we needed it, because we had been um, denied so
Right,
much,
right.
even a decent diet.
Mm-hmm.
We were in survival mode for generations, with the exception of
Yes.
a few. So I think that as we progress as a people in socioeconomics, education, which we're at the best level we've ever been, and we're not where we're going to be, that we will see, as we are, our people seek the help that they need without stigmatization added to it. It's not an excuse, it's just the history of where we've come from in this country.
Yes. Yes.
Some will never do it, but
Yes.
many will, because she's speaking of and spoke of the increase of what she has seen and experienced as a professional in that realm. And I see it just as a layperson and people that I talk to. I have several friends, and I went after my mom's death, and I'm thinking of going back for me. Um, but I think that we're coming along. We are. I do. I have to believe that. And it is indeed my prayer for the spiritual side of the healing and deliverance, as well as taking care of our whole body, our brain included.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've met very few people in my 61 years of life that have not experienced some level of trauma. They may not have articulated as
That,
such,
that's right.
but we've experienced trauma.
Absolutely. We
We,
experience
our
trauma with being
ancestors,
African Americans.
some of our trauma comes from our ancestors. So, I even teach and train about um utero trauma.
Mhm.
Babies receive trauma in
In
the
the world.
uterus,
Uh-huh.
right? Because of the relationship that the parents had.
That's right.
Some kids, the mother didn't want the baby, the father didn't want the baby. Those things start to impact that child before they even get here.
It's believable. And living in a
Absolutely.
tumultuous situation, I mean,
Yes,
children hear, they move, they
yeah,
feel. That's very believable. And it may not be a memory that you can register in your mind, but your body records it.
your
Your nervous
body records
system,
it
so it's imprinted before you even get here.
before you even get here.
Hmm. That's very good and very believable. I get it. Well, I want to thank you so much
You are so welcome. Thank you.
for this time and this conversation and all of these wonderful nuggets of wisdom that you have shared with our present and our future safe space audience. I want you again to give people a way that they can contact you. If you'd like, you can give the titles of your books again, or just tell them
Okay.
what you can give your website so they can go to that link and buy them, or they can
Okay.
obtain them on Amazon. Your contact information, the conference information, just once again before we end,
Okay.
because I want people to be able to contact you and to be able to partake in whatever it is that they need, that you can meet them at their place of need.
Absolutely. So the first thing I'm going to talk about again is the conference. The Heal Anyway experience is going to be held in the Noonan, Georgia area on September 28th from 11 until 2 o'clock. There is a conference link. It is a bit.ly link, and that link is bit.ly/Heal Anyway, the experience, all lowercase. My Instagram is I am Erica Anderson. My Facebook is Erica Anderson, and I also have a business page, Heal Anyway LLC. My email address is preacherlady63@gmail.com. And I would love to have you come and just receive from the Lord. It's not about me, it's about what He is going to do in that space. And my additional website is Erica V as in victory Anderson.com. And all of my books are available on that site.
Perfect. Thank you so very much again for availing yourself and giving us your time here at Safe Space. I have been looking so forward to speaking to you, even
It's
just
been my
reading
pleasure.
and looking at your social media and becoming more educated about what it is that you do. And it has just ignited a whole new blessing and
Absolutely. Praise God.
source of information to share with others that may be looking for what you have to offer. And sometimes people don't even know that they're in need of it. But if the Holy Spirit tells me to drop that nugget on them, and all I got to do is drop it, He'll do the rest. And
Absolutely. And typically I host master classes, but we've kind of shut down just in preparation for the experience. But I do um, 15, 20-minute free consultations as well for coaching clients. So I'm available to do that as well.
that's awesome. That is awesome. Awesome. Again, thank you so very much,
You're
Erica, for
welcome.
your time, for your information, and for being obedient. I know that you are blessing many. I have no doubt. As you said, and I believe, I've never met anyone that's done any level of living that did not have some type of trauma, whether they speak about it or not. And sometimes you don't have to know the specifics. If you're in
Mhm.
tune with what you're looking at, it shows it.
Absolutely. It
You,
does. It
you can
does.
see it in their reactions, in their insecurities, in the way they treat others. It just rears its ugly head in a lot of ways. So we all need some self-care. You know, that's the buzzword now.
Yeah.
We all need, but we need true self-care, not just a spa day.
No,
We
not a spa day.
we need
No,
some true.
we need a washing of the word.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again for coming by Safe Space. You all have all of her information, and it will be in the comments of the show. For those of you that have not followed on Safe Space at with Shelby Arrington on YouTube, please do so. We appreciate all of your support. But mostly, we want you to get these messages. So if you don't follow, it's okay. Get the word, the message from any of these stories and testimonies that put you on a street called straight, as my spiritual mom says. You all have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, Erica. Thank you all
You're
for.
welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
This is Shelby from Safe Space. Good night.
Good night.